Chapter 5 begins on page 36. There's a beautiful picture of a plant cell on the left and the green margin on the right that says cells in Chapter 5. Let's read the quote on page 37. It says, "Both religion and natural science require a belief in God for their activities. To the former, that's religion, he is the starting point, and to the latter, that's natural science, the goal of every thought process. To the former, he is the foundation. To the latter, the crown of the edifice of every generalized worldview." Turn your book to page 38, and we're going to start by walking through our chapter and looking at the major headings like we always do. On page 38, in black letters up at the top, it says cell. On page 39, in green letters, it says parts of cells, and underneath that it says osmosis. Turn your book to page 40, and there in green heading, it says more parts of cells. Turn your book again, turn your page to 42, and it says the cell theory up at the top. And on page 43, it talks about mitochondria and God's design. And that's all there is to this chapter. Pretty short, but there's a lot of vocabulary words. Let's start reading on page 38. Cells. What would you plan to bring with you if you were going on a long submarine voyage? What would you need if your vehicle were a spaceship? How about if you were just going into an underground cavern for a couple of days? What would you need to have? To remain alive, every creature, no matter how great or small, must have energy. With the energy that each organism takes in as food, almost all also take in oxygen gas. With that energy, living things grow and repair their bodies. With that energy, organisms also get rid of waste products, including carbon dioxide gas. What would you need on a submarine? What you would need on a submarine are the same things each part of your body must have. A source of energy, which is food, a way to use that energy, oxygen, raw materials to make new things from, and a way to get rid of carbon dioxide and other waste products. With a microscope and a drop of water from a pond or aquarium, you may observe tiny submarines. Many of the microorganisms that you observe are made of just one cell. Yet, each cell, like a submarine or spacecraft, must obtain and use energy and remove wastes. Let's investigate the parts of a cell. In 1665, Robert Hooke looked at a thin slice of cork and saw many empty boxes all packed closely together. After peering at many other plant parts through his microscope, Hooke discovered that they were all made of these tiny, small boxes, which he called cells. Cell means a very small room or compartment. Later biologists realized that each cell in a living plant is filled with living material, which they called protoplasm. It was discovered that animals are also made of cells, but without the tiny box-like cell wall found in plants. The cell wall helps support the plant's body. Up at the top of page 39, please. Unlike animal cells, plant cells have tiny green parts called chloroplasts. These parts are used in photosynthesis. Inside each chloroplast is an important green chemical called chlorophyll, which is used by plants to capture sunlight. Parts of cells. Plants and animals are alike in that both are made up of cells. Your body is made of approximately 20 trillion individual cells, each doing its own special job. Your cells are similar to all other cells in many ways. The thin cell membrane encloses the cytoplasm and nucleus in every living cell. The cytoplasm is where cell activities take place. A dense structure that controls the cell, the nucleus, is made of nucleoplasm and a nuclear membrane. With a good compound microscope, you may be able to see some of the plant cell parts, illustrated in figures 5.6 and 5.8. On page 39, in the middle of the page, is osmosis. The cell membrane, or plasma membrane, is semi-permeable and will allow certain molecules to pass into the cell. This makes each of your cell membranes very special. Water, oxygen, glucose, and carbon dioxide are examples of compounds whose molecules can pass through the cell membrane. The cell membrane controls exit and entry into the cell. Passive transport and active transport are two ways that molecules can move across the cell membrane. In passive transport, molecules move across the cell membrane without the use of energy by the cell. When there is a much greater concentration of a substance in one area, molecules in the substance naturally move away from each other and go toward the lower concentration. This movement from higher to lower concentration without the use of energy is called diffusion. Osmosis is a special type of diffusion in which water passes through a cell membrane. Turn to page 40 up at the top, the water molecules that pass through the cell membrane in osmosis move from a higher concentration of water to a lower concentration of water. A cell can move materials from lower to higher concentration, but that requires the cell to use energy. Movement across a cell membrane that requires the use of energy is called active transport. Let's look at more parts of a cell in green. Plant and animal cells contain many different organelles, which are tiny structures in the cell, all with their own functions. The mitochondrion is where the cell releases energy. Remember the mighty mitochondria as the powerhouses of the cell. The cytoplasm is in constant circular motion called cyclosis. Cyclosis moves materials around the cell. Vacuoles may empty. The word vacuole comes from vacuum, which means empty. Or they may contain food or waste. The endoplasmic reticulum, we're at the top of page 41 now. The endoplasmic reticulum is a tube-like organelle on which reactions take place. The two dot-like centrioles help animal cells make copies of themselves. Within the nuclear membrane, floating freely in the nucleoplasm, is a spherical shape called the nucleolus. Also inside the nucleus are chromosomes, long thread-like chemicals that contain the instructions for operating the cell. The name chromosome comes from two Greek roots, chromos, which means color, and soma, which means body. The strands of chromosomes are named colored bodies because they absorb color very well when cells on a microscope slide are stained. Golgi bodies, which look like stacks of pancakes, are storage centers for proteins. The lysosome is a bubble-like digestion center. Ribosomes look like tiny dots on the endoplasmic reticulum. Ribosomes are important in making proteins. Turn to page 42 up at the top, please. The cell theory. So many parts in just one tiny cell. Some living things are made of just one cell. Average atom is made of trillions of cells, and a giant redwood tree is made of many, many more cells than that. The point is that all creatures, great and small, are made of cells. This idea is the cell theory. The cell theory has three main statements. Number one, the cell is the unit of structure and function in organisms. This means that the activities that we call living happen in each cell. Number two, all living organisms are made up of one or more cells. This may be verified through the use of the microscope. And number three, cells are made by other living cells. This statement seems obvious after studying life science in the laboratory, but it causes a problem. Where did the first cell come from? The cell theory cannot explain the very beginnings of life. Your trillions of cells are now very organized, and each has a special shape to help with its function in your body. However, your body began as just one cell. The organization of your cells and how your one original cell came to be are discussed in the chapter on systems, that's chapter 16, and also in the chapter on animal reproduction, chapter 25. For now, be able to recognize the parts of a cell and understand the function of those parts. And I want you to look at the pictures on page 40 and 41. Look at the differences between a plant cell and an animal cell when you're done with this recording. Now let's finish up our chapter on page 43. So turn to 43 and we'll learn about mitochondria in God's design. Did you know that the world's largest animal, the blue whale, can grow to 100 feet in length? Stretch this whale across a basketball court and he would be out of bounds on both ends. On the other hand, a miniature bumblebee bat is often less than 1 inch long. What did these two creatures, one a krill-slurping ocean dweller and the other a cave-roosting plant eater, have in common? Both are warm-blooded mammals, give birth to and nurse their young, and were designed by the same Almighty God. Yes, there are components of creation even smaller than the bumblebee bat. Organelles, tiny specialized organs, each with its own function, are found inside living cells. One of these organelles is the mitochondrion, a cell's powerhouse. We can compare the energy-providing mitochondrion to a battery. Tiny flashlights might utilize a single tiny AAA battery, while a lantern might require a whole fistful of D batteries. In somewhat the same way, our intelligent designer equipped body cells that require lots of fuel, like muscles, with an abundance of mitochondria, while other cells with low energy needs only have a few. Low energy consuming cells may contain only one mitochondrion, while high energy consuming cells might contain thousands. How is it that each cell comes equipped with the right number of mitochondrion to perform its designated function? Think of how well that large lantern might function with only a single AAA battery rattling around inside. Does the placement of mitochondria sound like a random accident or the work of an intelligent designer? My vote is with the intelligent designer. And that's it for chapter 5.